You know, I feel like I've been ducking this particular topic for a long time, and I figured now is a good time to do it. I guess it's as good as any other time. We're going to talk a little bit about J.K. Rowling and her position about the trans community. And it sounds weird to say that because up until she basically liked a couple of tweets back in 2018 and then decided to share her opinion in 2019, she was an advocate for the trans community. She was an advocate for the gay community. She was an advocate for equal rights for everybody. But I guess she came across something that was one thing that was too far. And that was the day where she finally had to, at least in her opinion, say something about it. Truthfully, she probably should have kept that one to herself. But she had been sharing her opinion on all sorts of things over the previous 10 years on Twitter. So I guess, when you get used to doing that kind of thing, you just can't stop yourself. So in essence, her basic gripe, and I had to do some research on this because truthfully, I didn't really understand what her issue was. And it wasn't until I think maybe a week ago when I said, okay, let me go see what her real issue is, because she never had a problem with the trans community. And I guess it's gotten down to a place where, well, we're talking bathroom stuff in general terms. And in her opinion, just because you have changed your sex to a female doesn't necessarily make you a female all over, because it makes her, who was born a female, feel as though her worth is being undermined. And the worth of every other woman has been undermined. And women who have had children are being undermined by this other group. And as weird as this is going to sound to some of you who may have watched me over the years, and for all you new people who don't know me, stick around. In a weird way, I understand her position. I don't agree with her position, but I understand her position, because there was a possibility back when I was in college where I could have ended up somewhat believing things like her. And, I'm going to own up to it. Here's the thing. I'm a baby boomer. I was born in 1959. She was born in 1965. So she's Generation X, but in essence, she's 6 years younger than me. And things were way different back then. You had men and you had women. You had cross-dressers, but I don't think in those early days anyone was really calling them gay until probably the early 70s. In New York City, where, some folks decided, you know what, we're tired of hiding. We're going to have our fun. We're going to listen to our music. We're going to go to our parties. We're going to dress how we want to. And I didn't know that existed at the time. I didn't know that existed until basically I got to college. So I had no idea. And I went to college in 1977. But it happened in New York City. And what ended up happening is there were a lot of people who got hurt badly and killed because they wanted to basically express themselves and do what they wanted to do. And other people, today we call them MAGA people, just telling it like it is, decided, no, we ain't having that. And so they inflicted a lot of pain and a lot of other kind of stuff. And we didn't have laws back then that defended people from those who are violating civil rights. It just didn't exist. It didn't exist for black people, didn't exist for Asians, it didn't exist for nobody. Even though there was supposedly a Supreme Court law, which our Supreme Court now is looking to overturn, but I digress. Anyhow, I get to college in 1977. I don't know anybody in the first full year that I was in college was gay. I didn't really know what gay was. I had heard the pejorative term, which I'm not going to use right now. I had heard that, but I didn't know what it meant. I didn't find out until I decided I was going to become a music major. So starting the year 1978, I was a music major, which meant most of my classes were in one particular building. It also happened to be the building for the theater people and the building for art people. And that's when I started to meet gay people. Now, it didn't really impact me at all because, I was a military kid. I was used to meeting all kind of people in all kind of different situations. But on a military base, everything was kind of regimented. Everyone who lived on a military base had pretty much their father. I never met anyone whose mother was in the military back then, but had their father. So everyone had a certain way that you had to live. And then when we left there and moved here to where I live now in Central New York, went to a school with 3,800 kids, where maybe there were 50 black kids. And that was something I had to get used to because I hadn't ever been in that kind of situation before. So now here I am in college, 1978 after the first year, and now I'm being introduced to a whole new group of people. And I couldn't figure out, how did I miss not meeting any of these people beforehand? But it was interesting. I will tell you that there were some folks who you couldn't tell by looking at them and any action that they did that they were gay, male or female. There were some who were quite flamboyant. The people who were most flamboyant were folks who were from New York City area. It's from downstate, New York City, Long Island. And I have to admit, early on, I was kind of freaked out a little bit by it because it was something that just kind of came at me and I had no clue what this was. Now, being me, I adjusted really quick because I've always said that if there's nothing that is a physical threat to me, I'm good. I can pretty much handle anything. And I just talk to people as people. That's just how I've always been. So I've never had a problem dealing with white people, Asian people, Hispanic people, Native American people. I've never had a problem dealing with anyone. I didn't have any problem dealing with gay people, male or female. I will admit that back then, I didn't necessarily understand all the attraction because, I was attracted to women and men were attracted to men, some of them, and I didn't understand that because I've never been able to see a man as being good looking or attractive. That's just never been anything I've thought of. Women, yes, but seeing attractive women attracted to other women, whether they were as attractive or not, it did take me a little bit of getting used to. But I got used to it. It was no big deal. And as we've moved into this time period, it's still not a big deal with me. And I have to say this. When it comes down to race, let's talk about race for a bit. I knew what I was. I knew what I was when I was one of 50 out of 3,800. I knew what I was in college because there wasn't a whole lot of black people there either. But I never had any fear of anybody. That's just how I roll. I've never had any fear. But I understood certain things back then. For instance, these days people will castigate anybody who dresses up as someone from a different nationality. Well, that was common back in our day. Matter of fact, that was common when I was a kid. So you had folks who would, paint their faces up and do all kind of things, and they would be some musical artist or whatever, and it meant nothing to anybody. In the 80s, there were a lot of people who put stuff on their face to be Michael Jackson and Prince and some of the other folks, and it wasn't considered any big deal. Nowadays, it's a really big deal. Times have changed. They call it cultural appropriation. And you have a lot of black folks who are upset at white folks because they will wear stuff or do stuff with their hair that you're saying, see, you're just stealing something from us. I don't necessarily go along with that, but I'm a boomer. So I was used to seeing that, but younger folks aren't used to seeing that. Well, let's go back to JK. Like I said, she's only 6 years younger than me. And so she would have grown up during a period of time where you didn't have trans. You didn't have all this other kind of stuff. And yet, for a long time there, every time she came into something new, she embraced it. She celebrated. She protected. She gave a lot of money to these things. But then, like I said, there's that one thing that took her over the edge. That could have happened to me. There was a young woman. I'm not even going to say what her name is because, well, not like I know her all that well. I didn't know her all that well back in college. And I wasn't there. So I didn't see it, but I had a few folks who told me about it. Where it turned out that she decided to show herself as being lesbian. And she also wanted to show herself as being bold. And so there were some guys in there in the music building, and she went into the male bathroom and went up to a urinal and she did her thing. I've never been able to figure out how that would have worked, but she did it. And they were stunned. And she was very attractive. And I didn't find out about that until a couple of years later. And I just tried to figure that out. But in essence, she did that. And there were some guys who were major league disgusted by that. And some who were angry. But there were some others who thought, wow, she's got a lot of guts. There you go. I never saw that in person, but I used to see her all the time. And like I said, I didn't find out about that till my senior year, but even after I found out about it, it didn't affect me on what I thought about her because, like I said, she was attractive. This long, dark hair and whatever, and she was very talented. I just never really thought much about it because I don't go out of my way looking for certain things to make me get angry. I don't need that. There's so many things going on in this country right now that, you know, it's harder to stay away from stuff that keeps me from being angry than going around looking for it. So one of the things that I've done over all these years is I've done videos where I've talked about not accepting bad behavior. And when I talk about bad behavior, I have a lot of times talked about racism. I will say misogyny in the fact that there have been men who have beaten a lot of women, and these are famous people who have beaten women and done stuff like that. There are people who've walked up to gay people and just beaten them up, hit them with bricks and hit them with bats and whatever. It's like, oh my God. And that's ridiculous. That shouldn't happen. Those folks need to go to jail. That is totally bad behavior. When it's come to musicians and when it's come to comedians, if I owned anything from those folks who had assaulted somebody else, you know what? It's like, no, I can't enjoy that anymore, knowing the type of person that they were. And so I got rid of it. So I have no more James Brown stuff. I have no more Rick James stuff. I have no more David Ruffin stuff. There's some other folks out there, but no, I just couldn't accept that. But I won't get rid of my Harry Potter stuff. And I had to think about that for a while. Because, one, I'm seriously ingrained in that. I watch every movie and I read every book 4 times a year. And I always find out something new. And even though I'm an older guy, it came into my life during a time where I kind of needed something that was uplifting. Even with all the bad stuff that happened to poor Harry and some of those other folks, it was uplifting in a way. And I said, okay, how do I justify her? Well, I justify her the same way that I've justified some other people. Y'all remember Paula Deen? I did a video way back in, I think, 2013 or 2014, where I'm talking about Paula Deen, where this thing came out where it turns out that she had been saying certain things about black people and whatever. And someone asked her, have you always said these kind of terms? And I can't remember what her answer was, but my thought was, well, of course she said those terms. She was born in the South. She was older than me. I think she was like 15 years older than me, and I was in my... I mean, she may have even been older than that. But of course she said that. Everybody in the South said stuff like that. That's why I was glad that I was only born in the South and lived up north or out of the country after that, because I never had to deal with someone using that word on me all the time. And I think that Dad probably would have said something, because I've learned some stuff about Dad that, that wouldn't have been good. Still, you know that she said stuff like that. You know that President Lyndon Johnson, you know he said it. He was an old Southerner. Old Southerners said stuff like that all the time. And to judge someone based on the time frame that they came from didn't sound right. When certain people have been busted for, the appropriation thing or blackface or, doing makeup so that they look Asian or whatever, well, now folks should know better because that is not a good thing anymore. But back in the day, people did that. So if someone within my age group, and I give it like a 10-year window, whatever, if they have not been someone who has had a lot of experience with that, then for me to expect that they're going to know better would make no sense. At work, yeah, they should know better because I don't know if there's many businesses in today's world who don't give somebody a talking to, I don't even know if that's a phrase anymore, but a talking to about discrimination and diversity and what not to say at work. And yet it still happens. We got all these people who are called Karens because they go after people who don't look like them and people who they believe don't think like them and people who they think are beneath them. And by the way, there are male Karens. I don't know if there's a name for them, but it's out there. And you don't forgive certain things. If they're way out of whack, you don't forgive that. If you're watching a video where a Karen is doing something to someone else, another woman, and she hits them and they smack her back, you know what? She got what she deserved. Should she go to jail? I don't know. Should she be arrested? Yes. Should she be charged with something? Yes. But go to jail? Only if she really hurt somebody bad. But that happens all the time. And those people end up losing their jobs. And I think that J.K. Rowling has basically lost the reputation. I hate thinking this, but I truly believe that that is really how come the last three, or the three Fantastic Beasts movies haven't done so well. Because I think every single one of those movies has been fun and fascinating, but the numbers have gone down as she has doubled down on her position. Like I said, it's a tough thing to think about. But at the same time, like I said, I'm an older guy. I lament the days when rap didn't have so much cussing in it, didn't have the N-word using all the time, because in my opinion, if the black artists are saying it all the time and then the white kids are buying it, which is mainly, without white kids, none of the black rappers would have any money whatsoever. But the white kids are repeating what they're hearing in the song lyrics because we all have repeated song lyrics we've heard. But back in our day, the lyrics were a little bit different. And then we get mad at them for it. There was some kid who was like the first choice. He was like the number one ranked quarterback. And he was already had the scholarship to this school. And then they took it away from him because the day that they offered it to him, he was in his car and a song was playing on radio. And he starts singing the song and the N-word comes up and he says it because he's in his car. And they rescinded the scholarship. And personally, I said, no, I don't think that's right. Because he's singing the song. And yet, there was a time when I was at a gas station putting gas in my car and this car pulls up and there's these two white kids who get out of the car and they're blasting the music really loud and it's a rap song and it's got the N-word in it and they're singing it out loud to each other, and then they looked over at me and they looked embarrassed. And I didn't know how to react to it. I mean, I just finished putting the gas in my car and I left, but I said, wow, they knew that they had done something wrong, that moment, because they hadn't paid attention to me being there. And I don't live in an area where there's a lot of black people, but it puts people in a spot. And so I think that there are times where we have to kind of look at these things. Can you be mad at her, J.K. Rowling? Yes. But can you understand why she might be that way? If you're younger, probably not. Like I said, millennials, the rest of them, is there a Gen Z? Is there a Gen Y? I can't get any of that stuff down. But it's just one of those kind of things where I understand where she's coming from, because indirectly she's from my early generation, even if I'm a boomer and she's a Gen Xer. But is she wrong? Yeah, she's wrong, but I understand. And there are people like her who I understand. And she hasn't done any violence on anybody. And it turns out that she's actually still giving money to some of these charities. So, I don't know. Anyway, I just felt like I wanted to do this video before the end of the year. I got one more coming. And then, you know, we start 2023. But that's my thought. How do y'all think? If you're younger, do you understand why some of us older folks might think differently? I know that you're probably going to say it shouldn't make any difference, and I can't fight that, because truthfully, like I said, I think she's wrong, but I understand her. Just like I understand some other folks who are either my age or older than me who said and did things that in today's world would be a bad thing to do. Anyway, y'all let me know. My name's Mitch Mitchell. I hope you have a wonderful day. Let's see what happens.